Well, this is our first page for the chapter on the Industrial Revolution, chapter 21. Before we get into it too much, I want to read you this. So one thing we'll be talking about in this chapter is new ideas, new inventions, and sometimes it's not always the person that comes up with the idea first. A lot of times it's the person that improves upon the idea. So I was watching TV one night, and this was actually in 2001 when I wrote this down. I thought it was very interesting. It's about McDonald's. So there were two brothers called with the last name of McDonald's, and they started a restaurant. Sales were not real good, so they shut down and redid their restaurant where they could serve customers from 20 minutes down to 30 seconds. This man named Ray Kroc came in, and he bought from these brothers the concept of fast food as they were doing it. He then started to sell franchises to other people. They could buy a McDonald's franchise. He got tired of the McDonald's brothers having to okay everything, and so he bought them outright. He paid them $1 million each, plus $700,000 for taxes. He thought he was buying the first McDonald's restaurant, however he wasn't, but he was buying their name. So they kept the first restaurant, but they had to change their name to the Big M. A while later, Ray Kroc built a McDonald's close to their Big M and put them out of business. Very ironic to have that happen. And also, I believe if you buy a franchise, I'm not positive, but I'm guessing it's somewhere around $1 million. And that's what they were paid for the very first one. Just some stats for today again. So this one I've updated in, so 2001 there were 28,000 McDonald's worldwide in 120 countries. In 2017 there are 36,000 McDonald's worldwide. 1 out of 8 Americans have worked at a McDonald's. The golden arches are more recognizable than the cross on a church. When one opened up in Kuwait City, there were 15,000 people waiting in line to be served. And the drive-through was 7 miles long. So that would be from here to past Meadow. That would be that long. So again, not always the person that comes up with something first, but maybe who improves upon it and does it better. Okay. So what is the Industrial Revolution? So it started in the 1700s. Machines were being built. There were new sources of power like steam. We'll also be talking about the factory system. So no longer depending so much on animal or human power. So the Industrial Revolution was power-driven machinery came to take the place of hand tools. And this took place first in Britain, Great Britain, in 1760. Okay. So why Great Britain? Well, they had favorable conditions. These conditions made it ripe for industrial growth. Number one, they had a labor supply. They had a lot of people. Number two, natural resources. They had coal, they had iron ore, and there was plenty of cotton. Number three, investment capital. Capital is money and goods, equipment, supplies. 4, entrepreneurs, people with good ideas, willing to take chances and start businesses. Number 5, transportation. So being an island nation, they had easy access to ports and harbors where ships could take goods in and out. Markets, remember, British colonies, the crown that we talked about with India and some of the other places around the world. So Great Britain had a lot of colonies throughout the world that they could sell things to. They had government support. The government protected businesses and helped them to expand. And one other thing on transportation. So an island nation, harbors, canals, rivers to get those goods down to those to the harbors, and also merchant ships that were protected by a very strong navy. Up until the early 1900s, Great Britain had the strongest navy in the world. After that, that title has fallen to the United States. Okay? So an entrepreneur, those are people who organize and manage businesses. Again, somebody willing to take a chance and invest in a business and get it started and get it running. Just want to point out with this picture, so with the Industrial Revolution, just starting out late 1700s into the 1800s, they don't have what we have today as far as OSHA. OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. I think I got that right. And they go into places and they check out, is it safe for workers? Well, if you can imagine working in a place like that, if you had any loose clothing, it could catch on some of these gears. You could have your pants ripped, or you could be injured severely. There's a lot of stuff hanging down, a lot of moving things, and so if you're working, you could lose a finger, a hand, or just again very dangerous conditions. But that really wasn't an issue back then. Okay. So there were two revolutions. Again, the Industrial Revolution, but there was also an agrarian or agricultural revolution. So with this agricultural revolution, it resulted in better harvests. A man by the name of Jethro Tull came up with what was called the seed drill. 1701 was when this invention took place, and this increased crops with less seed. Well, I usually ask the question, how is that possible? Well, the way it's possible is that the seeds were planted specifically in rows. So rather than go out and just, broadcast the seeds all over the place, and then part of them might be eaten by birds, and part of them might be, tilled up as you're weeding the space. These would be specifically where you want them, and then those would be raised. We put things in furrows. You could water down the middle of them, and the plant would be growing on both sides. So, another man, Charles Townsend, he experimented with the soil, mixing lime and clay to help the soil improve. Also, growing turnips to feed livestock through the winter was a novel idea, and it worked. It was a very good idea. The Enclosure Movement, buying small farms and fencing in of lands previously open for public use. So animals couldn't just roam freely. They were kept secluded in areas. As an owner, you could keep track of your animals. You could keep track of what they're eating and where they're eating too. In Great Britain, they have a lot of walls made of stone, and they also have a lot of hedges that they use. If you've ever seen movies or TV shows, they have a lot of those. Okay, the next industry as part of the Industrial Revolution was the textile industry. So this is the first industry to become drastically changed by the Industrial Revolution. The agrarian was improved, but this one was very drastic, okay? And textiles, of course, is cloth or material that clothing is made out of. So we'll talk about the factory system on the next page, but before that, we have the domestic system, or also known as the cottage industry. And this is where most work was done in people's homes. They didn't have big machines back then. They just small machines, a lot of work done by hand in people's homes. When work was done, somebody could come by and collect it, or they would take it to somewhere where they could be gathered and then shipped off. Okay? But then we start with moving towards the factory system, and so they now need better ways to do things. So we have John Kay invented the flying shuttle, which cut weaving time in half. Now these first two that I'm going to talk about were actually still powered by hand. Somebody had to crank something or move something back and forth. So these first two powered by hand. So if you cut weaving time in half, that means you have a need for, obviously, more yarn. So James Hargreaves invented what was called the spinning jenny. I think he named it after his daughter. And this one could spin more yarn. So again, that created another need. So Richard Arkwright, his water frame produced stronger yarn, and I'm sure more yarn than what the previous one did. And then these next two were powered by powered by water. So first two by hand, second this one, and the next one by water power. Okay? So the name is Edmund Cartwright, and his power loom weaving was done faster. So if the machines are producing more yarn, that means that the cotton is being used up, and so they had to start weaving faster to keep up with that demand. And then at that point, you then needed more cotton. So we have Eli Whitney's cotton gin. And this machine mechanically cleaned cotton. So he's the one, I showed you the little demonstration with interchangeable parts. He's the one that did that with the lock on a gun, a flint lock, where they would pull it back and you would put a ball down it, black powder, prime it, do all that stuff, and then it would shoot once. Then you had to redo the whole thing. But that lock on the gun was very important, and he made those to where the parts were interchangeable. Great invention. Now, again, I usually ask a question: is there a problem with these machines? Well, the answer is that yes. In fact, this machine could do the work of 50 people. And so, well, they don't have a job anymore. True, however, somebody's got to build these machines, and so that could then open up new jobs. So hopefully there's a good trade-off with people being able to still have jobs or different jobs. Okay? And that's the first page. So thank you.